All right, so get ready because we're diving into a story that is, well, it's about more than just a legal battle. It's about potential corruption that goes all the way to the heart of the justice system. We've got emails, court documents, even this really weird police letter. All of them hint at a possible cover-up.
It's captivating how this seemingly simple insurance claim turned into something with such profound implications.
Right. So it all starts with two sisters, Chenier and Brittany Richmond. They filed a claim with their insurance companies, J.I.Co. and Assurant, after their home was damaged in a flood. You would think that would be pretty straightforward, right? Flood insurance pays.
It should be, but that's where things get a little bit dark. Enter Judge Christopher Whitten, the judge assigned to their case. Now, a judge's role is to ensure a fair trial for everybody, but in this case, Judge Whitten seems to consistently rule against the sisters, even going so far as to block key evidence from being presented.
Oh, I'm preventing them from presenting evidence. Isn't that like a pretty big deal?
It is. A fair trial requires both sides to present their case. When a judge starts blocking evidence, it raises some serious questions about their impartiality. It's like a referee in a football game only allowing one team to score touchdowns.
That's a great analogy. So what happened next? Did the sisters just have to accept this unfair treatment?
Well, no. But things went from bad to worse. Not only did they lose their case, but Judge Whitten ordered them to pay the defendants' legal fees, which amounted to over $33,000.
Wow, talk about adding insult to injury.
Yeah.
So at this point, the sisters are out their insurance claim, and they're stuck with a huge legal bill. They must have felt incredibly defeated.
Absolutely, and understandably suspicious. That's when their lawyer, Mike Siegel, started digging deeper into Judge Whitten's history. What he uncovered is pretty alarming.
Okay, let's unpack this. What did Siegel find?
He found that Judge Whitten has an unusually high reversal rate by the Court of Appeals. This means that many of his decisions were overturned because they were deemed unfair or biased.
So it wasn't just this one case. This judge had a pattern of questionable rulings.
That's what the evidence suggests. And to make matters even more unsettling, many of these reversed cases involved rulings against individuals who were up against large companies or powerful institutions.
Wait, so it's not just that he was making bad calls. There might be a systemic bias in his decisions. Yeah. That's disturbing.
Exactly. It raises the question, was Judge Whitten simply incompetent, or was something else influencing his rulings?
Now, remember you mentioned earlier that the defendants in this case were represented by Kavanaugh Law. Does that name ring a bell?
It does, and this is where things get even more suspicious. Siegel's investigation revealed a potential prior connection between Judge Whitten and Kavanaugh Law. The exact nature of their relationship isn't entirely clear from the sources, but it's a detail that definitely warrants further scrutiny.
Okay, so we have a judge with a history of questionable rulings, potentially favoring powerful entities. And he may have a connection to the law firm representing the defendants in this case. What happened next? Did anyone confront Judge Whitten about this?
Not directly. Instead, the sisters, feeling like they had nowhere else to turn, reached out to the Gilbert Police Department. Specifically, they contacted the White-Collar Crime Division, hoping they would take their claims of corruption and extortion seriously.
Extortion, hold on. This keeps getting more complicated. Where did the extortion allegations come from?
Well, the sisters alleged that after Judge Whitten issued his rulings in favor of the insurance companies, Kavanaugh Law began making some very aggressive demands. They essentially said, pay us $34,000 or we'll make sure you face even more legal trouble.
Wow. So not only did they lose their case and get hit with a massive legal bill, but now they're being threatened with even more financial and legal hardship.
That's right. It's a pretty intimidating situation to be in, especially when you're already feeling vulnerable and powerless. Remember, they're dealing with powerful insurance companies and a law firm that seems to have the judge on their side.
So the sisters go to the police with these allegations. What was the police response? Did they find this whole situation as shady as it sounds?
They did. In fact, the Gilbert police were surprisingly receptive to the sisters' story. They issued a police report, launched an investigation, and even began preparing to arrest Judge Whitten.
Wait, they were actually going to arrest a judge? That's huge. It sounds like things were finally moving in the right direction.
It seemed that way. However, there was one crucial step they needed to take before proceeding with the arrest. They needed to coordinate with the Arizona Attorney General's office. But after contacting the AG's office, everything went silent.
Hold on. So the police were ready to arrest a judge for corruption. They reach out to the Attorney General.
Yeah.
And then suddenly radio silence. That's very suspicious. What happened next?
That's the million-dollar question. And it leads us to the next part of our deep dive. a mysterious letter, and a sudden shift in the investigation.
Okay, so we left off with the Gilbert police seemingly ready to make an arrest, but then, Jord,
Yeah.
suddenly going silent after contacting the Attorney General's office. It's like the whole investigation hit a brick wall.
It is curious, isn't it? And to make matters even more strange, Chenier received a letter from the Gilbert Police Department that just raised more questions than it answered.
You mean that suspicious letter we mentioned earlier? The one that seemed hastily written and full of errors?
Precisely. This letter claimed that no crime had been committed, but then went on to say that they were referring the case to the Phoenix Police Department for possible follow-up.
Hold on. If they determined no crime was committed, why would they transfer the case to another police department? That makes absolutely no sense.
It's baffling, right? And this is where understanding Arizona law becomes crucial. The sources cite a couple of specific state laws. Arizona Revised Statutes 13108 and 13109, which essentially outline the concept of jurisdiction.
Okay, I'm going to stop you right there. I think it's important for our listeners to understand what jurisdiction actually means in this context. Can you break that down for us?
Of course. Jurisdiction, in simple terms, refers to the authority of a court or law enforcement agency to hear and decide a case. These specific statutes emphasize that the police department where the alleged crime occurred has primary jurisdiction over the investigation.
So if the Gilbert police truly believed no crime occurred within their jurisdiction,
Yeah,
they should have closed the case, right?
exactly. There would be no logical reason to transfer it to the Phoenix Police Department, especially if they've already determined no crime was committed.
So what are we to make of this transfer? Is it standard procedure, or could it be something more deliberate?
Well, the sources suggest that this move might be a way to obscure the case, to make it harder to track and investigate. Transferring it to another jurisdiction could introduce delays, bureaucratic hurdles, and essentially bury the case in a pile of paperwork.
So they're not outright dismissing the case,
Yeah.
but they're not really investigating it either. It's like they're trying to make it quietly disappear.
That's one interpretation, and it certainly raises concerns about transparency and potential interference. Let's not forget about the letter itself. The way it was written, with grammatical errors, incomplete sentences, and a lack of professionalism, is highly unusual for official police correspondence.
Yeah, it almost felt like a quick, informal note, rather than an official document from a law enforcement agency.
That's a fair observation, and the sources actually compare the letter to the communication standards set by the International Association of Chiefs of Police, or IACP. The IACP emphasizes clear, concise, and professional communication in all law enforcement documents. This letter falls far short of those standards.
It's like they weren't even trying to make it look legitimate, which makes you wonder, what were they trying to hide?
This brings us to the heart of this section, the potential cover-up. We have to ask ourselves, could the Arizona Attorney General's office be involved in some way? Could they be trying to protect Judge Whitten?
You're suggesting that a high-ranking government official might be involved in covering up judicial misconduct. That's a pretty serious allegation.
It is. But let's consider the timeline. The Gilbert police are ready to arrest a judge for corruption. They contact the Attorney General, and suddenly everything stops. Then this strange, hastily written letter appears, seemingly attempting to make the case vanish. The timing is incredibly suspicious.
I see your point. It does seem like an awfully big coincidence. But wouldn't covering something like this up be incredibly risky for the Attorney General? What would they possibly gain from it?
That's a great question, and unfortunately, the sources don't offer a clear answer. It's possible there are political connections or behind-the-scenes pressure we're not privy to.
I guess that's the frustrating thing about these kinds of situations. There's so much we don't know,
Yeah,
and it's hard to get a clear picture of what's really going on.
exactly. But we do know that transparency is crucial in any functioning justice system. Arizona even has a public records law. Arizona Revised Statutes 39121.01, which guarantees public access to information about legal proceedings. This case, however, is shrouded in secrecy.
So theoretically, the public should be able to request and review all the documents related to this case. But the lack of clarity from the Gilbert police and the sudden silence from the Attorney General's office makes that nearly impossible.
That's the situation we're facing. The lack of transparency makes it incredibly difficult to determine what happened, who made the decisions, and why the investigation took such a drastic turn.
You know, this case started with two sisters fighting their insurance company. Now we're talking about possible judicial bias extortion and a potential cover-up involving high-ranking government officials. It's mind-boggling how quickly things escalated.
It's a prime example of how seemingly straightforward legal disputes can uncover deeper systemic issues, and it underscores how important it is to scrutinize those in positions of power, to demand accountability and transparency.
Okay, so we've got this suspicious letter, potential jurisdictional violations, and a possible cover-up. Where do we go from here? Did the investigation just stop dead in its tracks?
Not entirely. While the Gilbert police seemed to back off, there are indications that the investigation in some form continued. Chenier mentioned in her email that she was instructed to write a victim impact statement.
A victim impact statement. Isn't that typically used in criminal cases?
It is. It's a way for victims to describe the emotional, physical, or financial harm they've suffered as a result of a crime. The fact that Chenier was asked to write one suggests that at least initially the Gilbert police were treating this as a criminal investigation.
So they were taking the allegations of corruption and extortion seriously, at least until they contacted the Attorney General. It's almost as if someone higher up intervened and told them to drop it.
It's a plausible theory, and that raises the question why. What could have prompted such a sudden change, of course? What information was shared during that phone call with the Attorney General's office?
It's like a missing piece of a puzzle. Without that information, it's hard to fully understand the motives and actions of those involved.
Absolutely. And that brings us to another crucial aspect of this story, the potential involvement of federal crimes.
Okay, so we've got this tangled web of potential misconduct, this mysterious letter, and a possible cover-up. But you mentioned federal crimes. What does that mean in this context?
It's an important point. Chenier, in her email, outlines several potential federal violations, including bribery, conspiracy fraud, obstruction of justice, and even conspiracy against rights.
Wow, that's a pretty serious list. I have to admit, I'm not really familiar with all those legal terms. Could you break down what some of those mean? Especially conspiracy against rights.
Of course. Conspiracy against rights, in simple terms, means that two or more people agreed to deprive someone of their constitutional rights. In this case, Chenier argues that Judge Whitten, by preventing them from presenting their case and ruling in favor of the defendants, might have violated their right to a fair trial.
That makes sense. So it's not just about whether the judge made the right or wrong decision, but whether he actively conspired to prevent the sisters from exercising their rights in court.
Exactly. And if you add that to the allegations of extortion by Kavanaugh Law and the potential cover-up by the Attorney General's office, it paints a troubling picture. It suggests a system where those in power might be manipulating the legal process for their own benefit.
So where does this all leave us? What happens next? Do we know how the case ended?
Unfortunately, the sources we have don't provide a clear resolution, which I have to say is frustrating. We're left with a lot of unanswered questions.
I agree. It's a bit of a cliffhanger, but we do have a lot of pieces of the puzzle. We've got this pattern of questionable rulings by the judge, the potential connection to Kavanaugh Law, the extortion allegations, the Gilbert police's sudden shift, that bizarre letter, and the possibility of federal crimes.
You've summarized it perfectly. And while we don't have all the answers, these pieces offer valuable insights into the potential workings of corruption and the challenges of holding powerful individuals accountable.
This whole case started as an insurance dispute, and it spiraled into something much bigger. It makes you wonder if this sort of thing happens more often than we realize.
That's the unsettling question that lingers, isn't it? If this can happen in a seemingly ordinary case, what else might be going on behind closed doors?
It's a sobering thought, but it also highlights the importance of people like Chenier and Brittany, who are willing to fight for what they believe is right, even when facing powerful institutions.
I absolutely agree. Their persistence and determination are inspiring. They refuse to be silenced or intimidated. And in doing so, they shed light on a potential case of corruption that might have otherwise gone unnoticed.
Their story is a reminder that we all have a role to play in holding our justice system accountable. We need to stay informed, ask questions, and demand transparency from those in positions of power.
Well said. This deep dive into the source material has uncovered some truly disturbing possibilities, but it's also highlighted the courage of individuals who stand up for what they believe in, and the importance of a vigilant public in safeguarding our justice system.
It's definitely a story that will stay with me. And I hope our listeners will continue to think about these issues and explore the resources we've provided in the show notes.
Remember, this is just the beginning. The pursuit of justice is an ongoing process that requires constant vigilance and a commitment to truth and fairness.
Thank you for guiding us through this complex and fascinating case. Until next time, this is The Deep Dive, signing off.